Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillahi wa ba'd. Welcome to Ramadan Spirit. This is a show coming to you live from Riyadh. As you know, it's coming through Dubai and also from UK, but for the next 2 days, we're going to be coming to you live from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Inshallah, today we're going to be talking about a subject which is extremely important for every single person's life. And we have a very blessed and beloved Sheikh with us that who is going to be discussing this particular topic with me. And we'll be having a discussion. The format is going to be very simple. It's like a discussion between us, and you are more than welcome to call us and have your questions answered. You'll see the number rolling down on the screen. And with this, let me start off and saying that, you know, when Ramadan comes in, actually what happens is everybody gets excited about Ramadan. So we all have this excitement. We want to do great things. We have these amazing things in our minds that we're going to accomplish in the month of Ramadan. Now, first week, second week, the motivation's high. Third, fourth week, it kind of like dozes off. And then Ramadan all of a sudden is gone. No longer is Ramadan with us. And we look back and we say, oh, I had wished I was going to do this. I had wished I was going to do this. And all these wishes and dreams turn into regrets. So how can we not fall into this particular trap of shaitan, trap of our nafs? And how can we be more productive in this blessed month of Ramadan? By setting concise goals that we can achieve in this month of Ramadan. That is going to be the topic for today. I am joined by Dr. Saeed Mahmoud. He is going to be the guest for today. So if you can introduce yourself, please.
Dr. Muhammad Saeed.
Muhammad Saeed.
Yes. I work as a professor in Taiba University and formerly in Al-Azhar University in Egypt.
Tell us about your, where are you from?
I'm from Egypt originally.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have a PhD in Hadith.
In Hadith,
yes.
mashallah. And what are your interests?
My basic interest is on fiqh, Hadith.
Fiqh.
Yes,
Mashallah.
and we were talking about it.
So if you got some questions related to fiqh, you know when to call right now. I won't answer them, but inshallah the Shaykh will answer us for us. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Okay, good. So, you know, goals are extremely important for a person's life. We all need to have goals. Goals can be big, small. We're not going to go into too much of the science of goals because we don't have time for that. But the idea is we would just want to touch on, you know, things that you guys can later on after the episode go back and research on your own and find more information on it. So, a goal, what is a goal? A goal is a thing or a picture of what I want to see in the future. Meaning if somebody is fat, he's overweight and he wants to be thin. So he wants to be thin. So his goal is the picture of him in the future with less weight. So that's goal. Simply it's something we want in the future. We think of it now and we start heading in that direction. Similarly, in the month of Ramadan, we have lots of goals. So one of our goals is going to be to gain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to gain freedom from hellfire. So in order for us to achieve that goal, how am I going to change my behavior, my actions now, today, in this very moment, so that by the end of Ramadan, I achieve that. I want to talk to you, Shaykh, about goals, for example. Do we have any examples from Seerah? For example, you know, a lot of people say, oh, this goal setting thing is new, it's a Western philosophy, it's a Western thing. Muslims didn't know about goal settings. So give us an example from the Seerah, you know, where we see that the Sahaba or Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was a goal, a specific goal, it was planned, there was orchestration of how it's going to end, and it ended in a good way.
Yeah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In fact, in the whole ummah, the whole religion of Islam was actually structured on building up and setting up goals and certain objectives. And we can touch upon that in every single step in the whole history of Islam. Since the very beginning, when the Prophet ﷺ was sent, prominently it was very clear in immigration, the hijrah, when the Prophet ﷺ migrated from Mecca to Medina, setting up a goal for a couple of years, receiving missions from Medina, preparation and sending the companions to teach people over there, and then traveling in groups, and afterwards the Prophet ﷺ traveling with Abu Bakr, setting up plans. How did he take directions? How did he maneuver in this whole trip, blessed trip? And finally, the Prophet ﷺ could establish a fully fledged state which actually could build men and also could build hearts that could actually go spread over the whole world, and could spread that message, the message of light, the message of Islam. So basically the Prophet ﷺ, through his life in Mecca and Medina, set up a goal of how to establish a school of highly talented and oriented companions of the Prophet ﷺ, who could take the raya, the emblem of Islam, afterwards, and they could teach the whole world.
Okay.
We have so many examples on the individual level, but as a religion, how Islam was very prosperous at the time of the Messenger ﷺ, we find out that he set up very certain well-known goals. He took all the steps possible, and the Prophet ﷺ was very successful in doing and achieving that.
MashaAllah. So in terms of hijrah, talk about how, the planning, the Abu Bakr and his role in hijrah, and how, the planning that he did, that's something interesting for the viewers.
Yeah, the beginning, the Prophet ﷺ decided that he was inspired, and we need also to emphasize on something very important. That's not a matter of planning, and I'm responsible for the planning, because we are talking about things which are in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala,
Yes.
First and foremost. So as a Muslim, we are supposed to take all the means possible, but at the same time, I'm not responsible for the result. I'm not responsible for whether it will. That's the reason the Prophet ﷺ took all means possible for guiding people, but he couldn't actually guide his uncle and his close relatives, but he took all the means. This is applicable to Abu Bakr. When the Prophet ﷺ told him, and we are talking about this, when the Prophet ﷺ told him that he is going to be his companion in that blessed journey to Medina, Abu Bakr took all the means possible. He prepared food, he prepared the guide, and he prepared his family, and he took all the means possible, and he didn't ask about when. And when this time came late, he didn't rush into asking the Prophet ﷺ, but when the 0 hour came, Abu Bakr was so ready to help and sacrifice. And this is very important, that we have to master all the means possible to be ready, and when it is required and when it is requested, we will be inshallah on the stop. And the Prophet ﷺ took all other possible ways of even misguiding the disbelievers, of taking the other direction.
Exactly.
Medina, for example, is in north, and the Prophet ﷺ took the south. He took an unbeliever to guide them through the journey. The Prophet ﷺ was hiding in Thawr cave. When he was confronted by Suraqa, the Prophet ﷺ had some procedures. When he came to Medina, in every single step, when you read the lines of the biography of the Prophet ﷺ, you will touch upon not a haphazard work. The Prophet ﷺ was so planned, set the plans, and he took all the possible means from the dunya perspective.
Exactly.
But at the same time, the heart was full of trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
I mean, you mentioned about Suraqa, and that's a very good point, because a lot of times, in achieving goals, for example, we might need support of a non-Muslim, because he's an expert in that particular field. Like Suraqa ibn Malik, he was the expert when it came to a guide. There was nobody else that could do this job better than him. And this was a mission that required extreme secrecy. But despite that, Rasulullah jeopardized that secrecy level. It would have been best if it was a Muslim. But he used Suraqa because, it's mentioned that he was the best guide that existed.
Suraqa was not the guide.
Oh, not Suraqa, sorry.
But actually, he was a freed slave.
Exactly. I meant the guide Suraqa was the guy who caught Rasulullah.
Exactly. But in the story of Suraqa himself, because Suraqa, he is tried to catch the Prophet and to give him to the disbelievers. But I need to concentrate on something relevant to our goals. Because the Prophet had a very firm belief in his goal. You remember when the Prophet ﷺ gave him glad tidings that one day that he will take the bracelet.
You will be wearing the bangles of Kisra, Caesar, and
Kisra, exactly. And afterwards, long time after, when
the
at the
time
time
of
of Umar,
Exactly.
Suraqa came and he claimed same bangles the Prophet ﷺ promised with. It means that the Prophet ﷺ at times, even when they were very weak and he was traveling and he was kicked out of Mecca, but he had a firm goal and he had a firm belief in his goal that one day it is going to happen.
It's going to happen.
Exactly.
SubhanAllah. Another story that comes to mind is, the story of Khandaq, and how, digging that trench or that Khandaq was an amazing goal. And there's a sheikh by the name of Raghib al-Sirjani. He has written a beautiful article about that, right? And he talks about how if we look at that Khandaq, which was 12 kilometers long, by the least estimates, and if we exaggerate and say some of the other people that have higher estimates, then it might be up to 20 kilometers. So roughly 12 to 20 kilometers long, and it's in width about 5 meters in the least estimates, and the highest is 10, and it's deep by 5 meters. A trench of this size was dug in less than a month. And this was a feat. And he talks about it that, how did Prophet ﷺ achieve such an amazing feat that if today we were to use all the mechanical machinery that we have for construction, for road work, it would take us at least a good 2 to 3 weeks to accomplish this goal, to dig a trench of this goal. And then the question comes, where, that 5 meters that they dug, where did all that the rubble that was there, where did it go? They had to move it out so that it doesn't hinder. So like the level of planning that went into just this trench, and the level of the goal setting that Prophet ﷺ did was phenomenal, to the point that Prophet ﷺ assigned goals to a group of 10 Sahaba. So every 10 Sahaba, they would be given a task, saying, you're going to do 40 dhira, you're going to be responsible for 40 dhira, or roughly 10 meters. That is your goal. When these Sahabis would finish that, subhanAllah, they would come back to Rasulullah and he would say, next 40 meters or next 10 meters is yours. And how he divided the work. So, subhanAllah, our history is full of that. Do you want to add something? Yes.
That's why, alhamdulillah, I live in Medina, and I try to, and I watched that. It was from the what you can call the normal measurements. It is impossible, because even if you can use the modern technology in digging and all of those endeavors, it's impossible. But I need to concentrate here. We have a shortcoming, which is when it comes to our work, when it comes to our education, to our homes, we are very organized, and we try to be highly talented in setting up goals and doing this. But when we do our volunteer work, and sometimes in our organizations, when we work on our ibadat and our rituals, we miss this point. Look how the Prophet ﷺ set up the goals for the companions, and he was very strict on that, and verses of the Quran were revealed specifying all of those and revealing secrets of the hypocrites who left the Prophet ﷺ during that work. It was very intensively cold, and all of those circumstances. So I think that we miss this point of organization when it comes to our religion, organization when it comes to our mosques, organization when it comes to our rituals, organizations when we work for Allah.
Subhanallah.
And this is a part of sincerity.
Sure, I get the point. So basically, it's like when it comes to our professional lives, when it comes to us dealing with the worldly matters, Muslims seem to be very organized. And I agree with you. And the minute we come to Allah and Islam or masajid, look at the states of the masajid. It's like, filthy, extremely dirty, not clean. But when it comes to our homes, they're quite opposite, because they have a very clear goal. We need to keep our home clean.
I think the reason we lack also dedication. You were asking about examples.
Yes.
You can imagine if you ask anybody among the Muslims now, how did you lead your life? And this question will be directed to a person on the day of a judgment.
Subhanallah. How
How did you lead your life? How did you spend your time? I'm just reminding you of a story of just one person of the scholars of hadith. And he used to live in Al-Andalus. His name is Baqi ibn Makhlad. Baqi ibn Makhlad, actually, he took the challenge of transmitting the ahadith, the statements of the Prophet ﷺ, to the people of, now it is Europe, to Spain, to Al-Andalus, he took an oath that he will never take on his shoes when he goes walking, and he actually took an oath that he will not take a ride in picking up the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and he went to Baghdad, and he received later, after a long time, when he returned back to Cordova Masjid, reciting the Musannaf, the big book of Ibn Abi Shaybah,
No.
and the hadith that he received from Imam Ahmad. A journey that the scholar said that he took 2 journeys in his life, one for 15 years and one for 20 years, just wholly dedicated for just acquiring and getting the ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ. One day, a young man entered to Imam Malik in the Prophet's mosque, and he asked about a person. His name is Muhammad ibn al-Qasim. Muhammad ibn al-Qasim is the one who transmitted all the legacy of Imam Malik. Most of the legacy regarding fiqh especially was transmitted from Muhammad ibn al-Qasim. So a young man entered into the masjid and said, "Where is Ibn al-Qasim?" And Imam Malik said, do you see the man over there who is sitting close to this pillar? It is Muhammad ibn al-Qasim. He came to Muhammad and he kissed him in between his eyes, and Muhammad smelled the guy. And he found out it is his son. He left him 19 years when he was just a baby or an infant in the stomach of his mother.
Subhanallah.
He dedicated 19 years traveling to Medina just for acquire. He has a mission. Those people, they had a mission of pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They had a big challenge. They know that no printing, no publishing, no books, nothing, but they had to memorize this knowledge to transmit it to this ummah to protect this religion for us.
Subhanallah.
So the mission, they were very capable and qualified of being able to achieve all those goals.
Subhanallah.
So when they set up themselves, they dedicated. Yahya ibn Yahya al-Laythi, the one who received the Muwatta of Imam Malik, Yahya ibn Yahya al-Laythi, when he was sitting with Imam Malik in the masjid, and an elephant passed by the Prophet's mosque, all the students left Imam Malik, all of them, except Yahya. And he asked them, why you didn't go to see the elephant? You don't find him, you don't find it in your country. He says, no, I came here just to see you and to receive knowledge from you, not to look at the elephants.
So what we find is it's extremely important for the month of Ramadan, as we're going to see in the later part of the show, that first we need to define that goal that we want in the month of Ramadan. But more importantly, it's dedicating ourselves to whatever we have set. As a matter of fact, one of the scholars, he said, and I translate that, he's like, it's more difficult to follow up on a goal that you've set on paper than to write it in paper. So a lot of people can write it on paper, a lot of us can have it written down somewhere, but more importantly, it's much more difficult when it comes to us actually having that dedication, that perseverance. So tell me the role of patience. Like, what's the role of patience in achieving a goal?
May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you. You are very expert in organizing and setting up goals. This is wonderful. But from the Islamic perspective, I think that you highlighted a very important point, which is the heart. Those people who dig the ditch, those people who traveled for long distances for just acquiring knowledge, sacrificed their lives, their money, their efforts and everything for the sake of Allah, they had something which is very important, which is a live heart. That's why the most important thing is how to train ourselves on cleansing our hearts and preparing it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to enrich it with the love and attachment, trust of Allah, yaqeen, patience and perseverance, and all of those traits, those very important qualities that must be embedded in our hearts. I think they are a very important step before setting up the goals.
Okay.
That's why the Salaf says that an act of worship or a ritual ultimately leads to another.
MashaAllah.
So
So to sum up what we've done, what we've covered in this is we've looked at the history of Islam, And we've brought some examples where we've seen time and again that the development of Muslim Ummah was not haphazard. It was not an illogical movement, go with the flow type of a thing. It was very planned. It was orchestrated by the Sahaba, by Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the scholars that came after that. And we find that goals is a very important part of their lives and how they achieved it. And also we find that goals should be a very important part of our lives and how to achieve them, inshallah. Now, having said that, you'll find a number below on the screen, inshallah, if you want to phone in and have some questions or answers pertaining. I would prefer that the questions are related to the topic of goals and goal settings and pertaining to that, so we all can benefit from this particular show. And more importantly, inshallah, in the next part of we'll be going for a short break, but in the next part of it we're going to talk about what were some of the different types of goals that the Sahaba had, that the Salaf had, pertaining to the month of Ramadan. Then we'll be looking at something very important, that what are certain categories, like so this is the month of Ramadan. You don't want to set a goal, I want to become a millionaire. That's like a disconnected goal for the month of Ramadan. So we want to make sure that the categories in which we set our goals are also completed, and they are the categories that we set our goals in, they're the right categories. So we're not setting goals in the wrong category in the month of Ramadan. So we're going to talk about a little bit of those categories, and I'll take your input on that. And then obviously we're going to talk about importance of writing goals down on a piece of paper. And that is, as you said, this is something I do for a living, teaching people goal settings and motivation and stuff like that. So I'll talk about it from that angle, from the worldly perspective. And that's it until I think we have a break now.
Inshallah.
We'll break and we'll catch you guys later.
Inshallah.
Ramadan, 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 Ramadan.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome back to Ramadan Spirit. We're coming to you live from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia for the next 2 days, and then we'll transfer to UK and then Dubai. It's an international show. We're talking about how to instill the spirit of Ramadan, and our topic for today is something pertaining to goal settings and how important is it for Muslims to have goals in the month of Ramadan. Now, before I start this particular section, there's an element that I want to talk about, which is, Ramadan is a month where each one of us can reform ourselves. It's a month where we can connect back with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We can develop a lot of skills that are required for us to be better Muslims. But as a ummah on the whole, when we look at the ummah, it's a very sad situation. It's not a very happy situation for the ummah on the whole. And I wanted to present an example for the viewers about a country which was in a worse situation than what we are in today as Muslims, and how they accomplished great things. So if we look at Japan in 1950s and after the war and stuff like that, they lost almost half of their male population. The country was a war-torn, devastated country. And in 1950s, they set a goal. They said, we're going to become the #1 country in the textile. That meant that the government itself and every single person in that country, they worked hard towards achieving that one goal. So the whole ummah of Japan, they were diverted into one direction, which was, we're going to become a #1 textile company. Whichever skills that were required, they did that. Then they moved on in 1960. So 1959, they achieved the goal. Japan becomes the world's #1 textile export country in the world. In 1960s, they said, you know what, let's set another goal. What is that goal? We'll become the #1 producers of steel in the world. Now, mind you, in order for us to realize this is a goal like Khandaq. It's an unachievable goal, like logically speaking, because Japan itself does not have any natural resource. It doesn't have iron found. So they had to import raw iron from other countries at a cost. Then they had to establish factories that would process this iron to turn it into steel. Then who's going to buy it? They have to go back into the main markets where steel is being sold and undersell their competition to be able to become the #1 producers of steel. And ladies and gentlemen, they reached their goal in 1969. In 1970s, they set another goal. They said they want to become the world's #1 producer in cars. They missed that goal by 1 year. In 1980, rather than 1979, in 1980, they became the world's #1 producer of cars. Then in 1980, so in 1980, they set another goal that for this decade, we're going to become the world's #1 producer of electronics and computers. And for this is something phenomenal. They realized that they need fine motor skills. So in order for us to achieve this, we're going to have a lot of electronics, a lot of circuits, a lot of ICs that need to be soldered, and a lot of fine motor skills. So what they did in 1970, in a decade before, they already knew that they were going to need this particular goal in 1980. So they already started working on it, and they started developing skills in the children and the next generation that is going to be responsible for achieving this goal. To the point they had exercises, for example, Sheikh, it's something interesting. They would give a paper in a classroom, and they would say to the classroom of 30 people, pass around this paper without having any dent or any wrinkle on the paper. And if the paper had any wrinkle, then you would have to start the game again. And this was the game that the Japanese kids played in the 70s so that they would be capable of becoming the electronic, so they would have the motor skills required for the Japanese people to establish this particular goal. And subhanAllah. But the reason I mentioned this is, is that if a country like that in recent history, it's just a few decades ago, if they can become one of the best countries in the world in terms of technology and infrastructure, then I don't think anything should hold Muslims, because Muslims have two major things that are on their side: Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the month of Ramadan. So month of Ramadan, we can change the way our ship is going, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala.
But I need actually to comment on this, which
yes,
is,
please.
This is a type of community which has a vision and mission, and actually the whole Muslim community.
We have a call. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Carry on.
So in the Muslim community, they had actually, they implanted and they planted this mission and vision in their children at the times of the Islamic civilization in Europe and in the East, because actually they taught all children, all generation, Quran and Sunnah.
Yes.
And basics of Aqidah. And then every child searched for which gap exactly that the Ummah needs me to fill. That's why we had Avicenna and Averroes and all of those excellent physicians and those who built up civilization. And in a time, we don't like actually to read the history, but this type of structure is also found in our in any successful community.
Exactly. Yeah. And so there was a caller, and by the way, his call got dropped, but he had a very beautiful question. He's from Somalia, and his goal is to build a mosque. So let's do it this way. I will tackle it from the strategical point of view, and I'll let you tackle it from the Shari'i point of view, that it's his goal. So what advice would you give this caller to establish a mosque in Somalia?
First of all, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give him the reward for his sincere intention. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it inshallah, as a vision, and also to see it in his eyes. Definitely it will be achieved, inshallah, by the will of Allah. I remember a story of a Turkish man, when he wanted actually to build a masjid. I think you know this story. And every time he has a meal, and it was very delicious, and he wants actually to eat it, and he says, "Oh, I'm going to eat it later." And then he saves the time for this meal until he built the mosque.
SubhanAllah.
This is very important to have those types of goals. He should work for himself and to save and to make dua for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and definitely Allah will make his goal #1 a palace in this life and a palace in the garden of paradise, inshallah.
SubhanAllah. Now for me, his name is Muhammad. Muhammad, what I would advise you is, oftentimes what happens is, the reason you asked this question, that is more interesting to me. Why would you ask this question? Because nobody would ask this question if they had all the means to build a mosque. So from what I understand is, he has the desire to build the mosque, but he lacks the means to build it. And we talked about it initially, in certain the earlier part of the episode where the Shaykh said, Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, when he heard that, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is going to be given permission to do hijrah, he said, As-suhba ya Rasulullah. And he said, As-suhba ya Rasulullah. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied and he said, As-suhba. Then Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, he planned every single thing possible without knowing when the hijrah is going to take place. What that teaches us is many times in our lives, in the month of Ramadan, outside the month of Ramadan, we have a goal. The goal is, I want to build an institute, I want to build a masjid. The masjid is going to be XYZ specifications of it. Now the thing is, I know where I'm headed, and I can only walk a certain distance, but after that it's all dark. I don't see anything. It's not there. So what I always tell people is, walk as far as you can walk with this hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that when you get to that point, Allah will show you more ways from that point, you'll be able to see further. But oftentimes what happens is we stop saying, I do not see a very clear path to my goal, hence I'm not going to do it. For example, somebody has a goal in the month of Ramadan, they want to finish 4 Qur'ans. 4 Qur'ans, for example. For some, it's a very easy thing. We have another caller.
Okay.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
How are you doing, brother? Abdullah.
Yeah. How are you doing? Ramadan Mubarak to you.
Ramadan Mubarak to you too. How are the people in Gambia?
Yeah, no, I'm in Italy. I'm a Gambian, but I'm in Italy at the moment.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Italy. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make things easy for you in Italy. Yes, go ahead, your question?
Okay. Yeah, my question is, I want to score the 100% goal of reward in this. Yeah, my question is, I want to score the 100% goal of the reward in the Ramadan.
Did you get the question is, can you turn off the television at the back? Lower the volume down because there's an echo.
Okay, that's not a problem. That's not a problem. Let me do that. Okay, is that okay right now?
Yes. Now speak slowly. It's not a very clear line, so
yeah,
go
my
ahead.
goal is.
Can you turn off the volume or lower the volume of your television?
I want to score the 100% reward.
You want to do what? You want to?
Can you hear me right now? I want to score.
You want to score?
My goal is to score the 100% reward of the Ramadan.
Oh, you want to score 100% reward in the month of Ramadan? You want to score 100% goal on the month of Ramadan? Okay, perfect. I got that. Thank you so much. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So the brother Abdullah from Gambia, living in Italy, has a question. He wants to score. That's an amazing question. He wants to score 100% in the month of Ramadan. I wish Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given us a way.
First of all, I think number one, and this is from my personal experience, before setting up a goal, we have to soften our heart. How to soften our hearts to receive all those rays of guidance which are included in the month of Ramadan. The month of Ramadan is not a type of thing that tries to what you can call setting up for material exercises that you have to do.
Okay.
The month of Ramadan is more concerned with the core elements of the heart that actually flourish afterwards and can revive the whole of your life.
Okay.
This is the reason that the Salaf, our righteous ancestors, used to exert their optimum effort during this month on different levels. Number one, on the level of softening our hearts and embedding the qualities of love and attachment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fear from Him, hope in His mercy.
How do we do that? How do we soften our hearts?
This is through contemplation of the Quran. And this is the other key of the month of Ramadan. That's why the Prophet ﷺ was so connected to the Quran during that month.
So everybody should have a goal that they should connect themselves to
To the
Quran in
book
the
of
month.
Allah subhanahu wa
So
ta'ala.
that has to be one goal.
Yeah, because actually Ramadan is a month of the Quran. The Quran was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet spent long hours with Jibreel teaching, mutually teaching during the month of Ramadan, and even the Prophet ﷺ, it was reflected on the character of the Prophet. According to the authentic hadith, that the Sahabi says, وَلَرَسُولُ اللَّهِ خَيْرٌ مِنَ الرِّيحِ الْمُرْسَلَةِ. The Prophet ﷺ was actually better in his generosity and hospitality than the wind which goes
Than a blowing
everywhere.
wind.
So the reflection of the verses of the Quran were actually shown in his character.
So how would Brother
Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
Abdullah gain 100% to answer his question?
Number one, of purifying the intention
Okay.
and rectifying it,
Okay.
and working on sincerely dedicating it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Okay.
Working on the quality, not the quantity. This is very important. It's not as many rak'ats that
Okay.
you do, but you must concentrate.
We have to go for a break. I'll hold that thought, inshallah. And we're going to take a short break. Don't go anywhere. And have your phone calls coming in, and we'll come back. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
رمضان 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 رمضان.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome back to Ramadan Spirit. We're coming to you live from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, as we have been coming for the last two sections before our breaks. And inshallah, this would be our last segment. We'll be trying to close off the topic of goal settings, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Please don't forget to call us. You'll find the number in the below the screen. It's I guess it's scrolling, so just find that number and give us a call. I would love to hear from you. We've so far had callers from different countries, Gambia, somebody from Gambia living in Italy, so it's fine. Now, Sheikh, we're about to close the segment. So we talk, we said in the earlier part that we don't want to set a goal, I want to become a millionaire, and start working for it in the month of Ramadan. It's like a disconnect, right? So there are categories that each one of us should focus on in the month of Ramadan. Each one of us has three main relationships that we're going to be asked on the Day of Judgment. It is going to be a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so me with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then there is a relationship with me with people. So how am I with my parents, my children, my wife, my brothers and sisters, my relatives, my friends in society. Then I also have a relationship, me, myself, I have a relationship with myself, right? So Ramadan is a month where I find that, we should focus on these three main relationships. So for example, a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So an individual that's watching our viewer, he wants to rectify something with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What should be some of his goals? As a Muslim and as the Ummah today, putting all the considerations, what should be some of the goals a person should have with pertaining to his relation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? We have a call.
Okay.
Hello?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Hello?
How are you doing, sister?
I'm fine. My name is Hasia, calling from Nigeria.
Hi, how are you doing? Ramadan
I'm
Mubarak to
fine.
you.
Ramadan Kareem.
Ramadan Kareem to you.
Okay, my goal is I want Allah to forgive me this Ramadan and the upcoming year.
Okay, that's good. Mashallah, that's an excellent goal. That's an excellent goal. And inshallah, the Sheikh is about to answer this question for you, inshallah. So just wait, and inshallah, your answer will be answered, inshallah.
Thank you very much. Ramadan
You're welcome.
Kareem.
Ramadan Kareem to you. Yes, Sheikh. So, connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What do we do?
I need to ask myself this very critical questions with regard to obligations and prohibitions, the limits, and these are the basic two questions I'm going to be asked before Allah. The rights of Allah is, did I do the obligations and the commands that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said to me, the basic obligations or not?
Okay.
And number two,
Fara'id.
Fara'id. This
Okay.
is the most important thing.
أول من
And-
يسأل يوم القيامة.
The first thing that a person will be asked about, his prayers, his fasting, zakah, his hajj, and also first and foremost establishing the monotheism and tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the heart. And before those obligations, a person should clear himself of
No.
anything which is haram. So if he has a major sin, a minor sin, if he has haram food, for example, that his livelihood or his job is not Islamic or anything, he must work tediously and hard to get rid of this haram.
So
before meeting
come out
Allah
of the red zone into the white zone, the halal zone.
Exactly.
Okay.
This is a very important start from
Okay.
the month of Ramadan, to have a pledge and a covenant, a promise with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, for your sake, for your love,
MashaAllah.
I'm going to commit your commands.
Okay.
I'm going to leave anything that makes you angry at me.
Okay, so we have a few minutes left. Somebody who's already out of the red zone, he's not doing a lot of haram, he's a practicing Muslim. What should be some of his goals? Quickly.
He must actually start slowly, and he must don't set up goals which are theoretically unachievable.
Okay.
But you have actually, but from my experience also, the best way of getting this type of enthusiasm is reading stories of about our righteous people.
MashaAllah.
And their stories actually soften the hearts and makes you, even if you are not physically accompanying those people, but you at least can accompany them. Try to do your best, as long as, that's why Al-Hasan al-Basri was asked one day, "Oh Hassan, we are," and he is in the second generation after the Prophet ﷺ, and said, "Oh, the companions have actually advanced us and they have already reached the Jannah. What are we going to do?" And
What's the point?
Yeah, they reached the Jannah riding horses, and we are just riding donkeys. And Al-Hasan al-Basri answered them
We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we enter
Yeah.
Jannah walking,
And
at least.
he says, as long as you are in the road, definitely, inshallah, you are going to reach.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. طيب, we have 2 minutes left. I don't think we'll be able to cover this with people. So quickly, with people, I think they should focus on Silatul Rahim. They should focus on mending the ties of kinships. Brothers and sisters, if you have not spoken to any of your relatives due to some issues, whatever, rectify this. Ramadan is the time where you can do that. Call them on for iftar. Resolve these issues, because they become a source of obstacle for our rizq. And specifically with me, with an individual himself, Ramadan gives you this power of willpower, right? Because you're holding yourself. Brothers in UK are 18, 19 hours. They're refraining themselves from food. This gives you this enormous power to accomplish anything you want to do with yourself. So whether it is you want to lose some weight, whether it is you want to read some books, whether it is you want to memorize Quran, I think this all gives that. So Sheikh, I think we have very few minutes left, I think a minute or two. Could you please summarize, just closing remarks?
Ramadan, I think Ramadan is not a matter of physical training, but it's actually a matter of achieving a goal. This goal, which is taqwa, fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the major objective of fasting.
Okay.
So if we can achieve this taqwa, this is, I think, the criterion by which we can measure our relations with others. Salat al-Rahim, for example, maintaining our relations with our kith and kin,
30 seconds.
treating our fathers and mother, everything that we can measure all of our relationships with Allah, with people, and even with ourselves through taqwa, through the fear of Allah.
SubhanAllah, through taqwa. As long as we're on that road of taqwa. Brothers, we have come to an end of the show, but before we end, there's a clip over here that I'd like you to watch. It's ways to connect with Huda TV, and hopefully it'll give you more idea of how you can connect with Huda channel.
Ramadan, 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 Ramadan.
Huda TV's social media sites are the best way to contact us from anywhere around the world. Stay connected with Huda TV's latest news and programs through Facebook, Twitter, Google+, YouTube, Skype, and Instagram. It's fast and easy. Stay up to date with your favorite shows and scholars today. Huda TV, a light in every home.
Ramadan, Ramadan, Ramadan.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Just to close off, inshallah, we have less than a minute left. So we have talked about 3 different relationships, 3 different categories that we're supposed to set our goals in this blessed month of Ramadan. So it is you with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you with the people, you with yourselves. And inshallah, if we set goals in these categories, don't get too over enthusiastic. Set 2 or 3 maximum goals in these categories and focus on them. The other important thing is make sure that your goals are somewhere visually in front of you. So in your bathroom mirror, somewhere in the front where it's like you walk into it every single day. That's very important. And now the issue is, inshallah, hopefully after the show that you guys can go and set your goals. Tomorrow when we get on, we're going to talk about something very important, which is related to the goal settings and also to Ramadan, which is how do you ensure that you carry on those goals? So how do you ensure that you don't drop off your, the road to taqwa? So how do you hold yourself accountable so that on the day of judgment, it becomes easier for us to cross that bridge, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Now, with this, we come to an end. Until tomorrow, inshallah, join us live from Riyadh. We'll be talking about accountability and how to hold ourselves accountable in the month of Ramadan with perspective to goals as well as to perspective to Ramadan. And we'll see some examples from the history of Islamic history of how our Salaf did that. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much, Shaykh, for joining us.